Establishing new behavior. We have learned that to establish a new behavior requires reinforcement or punishment in order for the behavior to become habit. Everyone knows what it means to form a new habit. So keep the concept of habit forming in mind as you review the key terms outlined in this session. The key terms we will review in this video are prompting, shaping, chaining, reinforcement, and stimulus control. Prompting is a very simple term to understand. If I were to say to a group of people, "Hi everyone, what am I doing?" I'm prompting the audience to say hello or hi. In psychology, prompting is a sort of artificial support or crutch, and the goal eventually would be to remove the prompt so that the new behavior just happened. If anyone remembers the TV show Home Improvement, you would remember that any episode of Home Improvement included the TV show Tool Time. And the host of Tool Time would always start every show with, "Does everybody know what time it is?" And the audience would reply with, "Tool Time." So, okay, I know I am dating myself to a certain point, but I want you to catch the concept. Prompt response. Now, again, keeping that in mind, our goal then, once that response has happened, then we can check the box, but then the goal is to get that to fade. And so we're not going to go over fading a lot in this session, but what the concept of fading is really being able to elicit the response without having to actually prompt. So using my tool time example, theoretically, the host could then come out, just stand there and point to the audience, and they could say tool time because they have all been taught to start the show with tool time. So now, okay, different example. So now if I were trying to teach my child to read, I am going to point to each word on the page for him. And I'm going to point to the word and go k, ah, in hopes that he would then add the t to form the word cat. Now, keeping in mind that once he's learned how to read, or he reads this word, I should be able to point to the word cat, and he should just be able to say it without me first starting with k, ah. That's the concept of prompting, and then kind of fading away that response. Now, another point with prompting is that the right timing is very, very important if we are really trying to get these associations to stick. Keeping in mind that this could take some time. Anytime you are attempting to promote a new behavior, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes consistency. It takes reinforcement. All of these things are what creates a new behavior. And when we lapse in that consistency, or we lapse in the reinforcement process, that's when people tend to fall back a little bit. But again, that goal is really to reinforce the behavior that we're looking for, and then eventually be able to fade away that prompting so that that new behavior will stick and becomes more natural. Shaping refers to the slow manipulation of behavior. With shaping, the goal is to take someone who currently has no knowledge of something and give them a way to associate a meaning and articulate the desired results, or really the operant response. That's what we're looking for. We are shaping their understanding. One point to remember with shaping is that positive reinforcement is key to shaping one's behavior. If you were to identify any type of behavior that you wanted to shape, you would then need to reward the individual as they took positive steps towards achieving that desired result. Even if they hadn't achieved that goal yet, remember that you are still shaping behavior. Of course, that goal would be for them to eventually hit the goal, and then you could say, this is how that behavior has been shaped. Now, on a quick aside, one thing that would really help with kind of this concept of shaping and even prompting is to be the model, to be the role model, the process of modeling. This is something that is incredibly effective. If you do it first and you're trying to show somebody, that's this concept of visual learning. You see somebody do it, you then replicate. So it makes these concepts go a lot further, and sometimes they don't have to be as long and drawn out as other times. Now, chaining is sort of an odd term, but again, it has a fairly simple meaning. Chaining is essentially creating steps, adding small behaviors together to create a large, more complex, or sophisticated behavior. Now, I understand this is a bit of a wordy definition, but I want you to think about this in terms of making scrambled eggs. If my son were to ask me to make him a plate of scrambled eggs with cheese for breakfast, and I said, no, I'm not going to make you scrambled eggs, but you can, he might look at me like I'm from Mars. Why is this? It's because he doesn't have the association that eggs in a carton then can they go from a carton onto a stove and then onto his plate scrambled with cheese. He doesn't really know where to start. So consider how this chaining process might look. You crack the egg on the side of the bowl, you pull the shell apart, you put the egg into the bowl, and then you discard the remaining shell. Now, what do you have? You have an egg in a bowl. So this is the first chain. This is the first chain or step broken into multiple steps of creating scrambled eggs. Now, this still doesn't get me scrambled eggs on my plate, or him in this case. So the next step would be to then get the bowl and whisk the eggs and then stick them in and on into the pan that's on the stove. And so that's the part where you start stirring and scrambling the eggs, adding the cheese and whatnot. So what would that be? That would be the second chain. Again, step one, step two. Now, of course, the third one is where we get to our desired results. And that's where eggs are scrambled, eggs have cheese on them. Now we can take them out of the pan, put them onto the plate, and voila, scrambled eggs with cheese. So, but keep in mind how chaining actually works. Now, a couple things on chaining. One quick note. There is a process of forward chaining and backwards chaining. Very, very simple terms. Forward chaining is steps 1, 2, 3. Backwards chaining is steps 3, 2, 1. It's just starting from that desired outcome or that end result and working your way forward step by step, or starting with the last step and kind of working your way forward. Now, of course, with my scrambled eggs example, you would not be able to do backwards chaining because that wouldn't really work. So now reinforcement is the next term in establishing a new behavior, but we're not really going to spend a whole lot of time on reinforcement because session 2 really outlined the concept of reinforcement and punishment and gave a lot of great examples. So now the last term that I'm going to go over is stimulus control. This is really where behavior modification starts to get a little bit more complex. Now keep in mind that the definition of a stimulus is the thing or event that evokes or draws out a specific functional reaction. Now, control. Control is the power to influence or direct one's behavior towards a certain desired outcome. So, stimulus control is essentially controlling the outcome of a certain behavioral response. As you can imagine, this is where many people want to interject motivation through thought processes into this concept, and rightfully so. There are countless examples of how individuals using stimulus control are using this concept to really get what they want or to get the desired behavioral outcome that they're looking for. So let's see. So consider the example of stimulus control. If my son wants extra computer time in a day, and he knows that he has to have all of his homework done day one before he gets time on the computer, he could easily tell me when he's asking for more computer time that he's done his homework for day one and he's done his homework for day two. And what he's doing is he is attempting to control the outcome. Now, if I agreed to extra time in one day, he could then almost be using my own methods against me. If I say yes to this agreement, his reward is that he got the extra time and he got the behavioral response he was looking for. If I say no, he likely won't do his homework a day in advance because that's not going to be worth it. He didn't get what he wanted. So the example, of course, had to do with the employee in or the example in the course shell had to do with the employee that was working a lot harder because they knew that their boss could see them working late or working harder than maybe some others. What were they looking for? They were looking for that positive acknowledgement that they were working harder. Now, I want you to take that example. Think about this. If I were the boss, and this was a personal example, and I had an employee that was doing this, I could easily test out this concept and see that my employee, I could test this concept out on like a case in point. So if I had an employee that was choosing to stay late and work a lot harder, and I recognized, but I did not acknowledge nor affirm them, then do you really think they would continue staying late and working harder? Or have they lost that control of the stimulus? So now think about this. This is really where psychology gets interesting, because think about how quickly this can change. Suppose somebody is doing this and their boss or I see them working late, but I don't recognize them and I don't affirm them, then they are likely going to start building up a certain amount of resentment towards me. They will probably stop working late, or they will work late and then start creating discord in their day-to-day because they are not getting the affirmation or the appreciation that they were looking for. So I want you to really think about those examples when you're thinking about stimulus control. So again, I'm hoping that all of these things are starting to come together. Keep in mind that this whole study of psychology and behaviorism is this giant puzzle. And there are so many pieces that go to this puzzle. And it just takes some time to really kind of get the picture that's behind that all these puzzle pieces are making. And in the end, is there really going to be a full picture there? Probably not, because this is something that we're always still studying. But the picture will start to make more sense, and you'll say, oh, I see this, and oh, I see this, and I see how this builds off of that. And so hopefully these explanations have really given some good context and a couple of good examples to this week's key terms. All right, everybody, we'll see you again later.